genocide against your own people. I certainly think it's worth discussing. Undoubtedly supports international terrorists and gangster groups, without any question, as it does narcotics smuggling, currency forgery, and all manner of other outlaw things. I think that certainly there's an absolute case for removing the Kim Jong-il regime, but we are subject to its nuclear blackmail. We are as much hostages to it as its starving slaves are. But on principle, of course, yes. They're looking for a war with us, and they will probably, I think, have one. I think we should pick the time and the place of it and not them. Totalitarian regimes are incompatible with our existence. That will be found out however much we wish it wasn't true, it is true. It will be discovered, it will be forced upon us, that awareness, if we don't develop it for ourselves.
I won't pursue that. I'll give the microphone number 2 the chance to ask a question. Fun though discussing Iraq is, you can't turn it into a filthy limerick, can you, Christopher? So, number 2.
It's a question on American domestic politics. Would you explain why it seems to me that the less well-off Americans on both the Democratic side and the Republican side, a significant percentage of them seem to resent some of the bills which Obama is trying to pass, which would apparently do them the most use? Perhaps the health bill, perhaps the financial services bill. They seem to resent it in a way that you might not expect.
Did you catch the question?
Yeah, I did. There is among a lot of Americans, including those who don't have any property and don't have any security of employment or income, there is a powerful resistance to state influence. It comes, I think, partly from the frontier. It comes in part from a sort of Calvinism that's quite strong among old pioneers, has been handed down. It comes also, of course, as a legacy of the Civil War. But there are many people who would say, if you let me keep my gun and you stay out of my church, I don't want any more help from you, thanks. I'd rather live as if the government wasn't there. That's the point of being an American. I don't want to hear from Washington. It's my right to live in this part of Kansas unmolested. This is paradoxically very beautifully expressed by a Tea Party rally, a placard that I'm sure some of you saw recently saying, keep the government's cotton-picking hands off my Medicare. Because they've forgotten where Medicare came from. They thought it was a right that they had to defend from Washington.
It's not one of Jefferson's, I don't think.
I think Mr. Jefferson would have had a slightly finer line on a thing like that. But that is the mentality, and that's also, of course, the irony of it. I deep down think Americans don't really want health care. They certainly don't want it if they have to pay for anyone else to have it. They think life should be risky. They think you should be taking your chances. They look down on countries where the government tries to make sure that everyone's life works out.
So what do you make of the Tea Party movement, and are you concerned by the tenor of the kind of groundswell of American politics at the moment? Do you think it's dangerous?
Well, my new line on this, which I've tried out on a few people already, is the Tea Party movement proves that all politics is yokel. I went to one of their big rallies on Capitol Hill the other day. I took my daughter, and in front of me there was standing in front of us there was standing a guy who said, "We didn't bring our guns," and then on the other side said, "This time." And then one said, "I'm defending the First Amendment today, but I'll be defending the Second Amendment tomorrow." And that's the gun amendment. And I thought, ooh, I'm really scared now. It seemed pathetic to me, actually. There was a note of desperation to it, and pathos, I thought. These are people who, in part, they don't recognize the country they used to grow up in. Small town, church, monochrome. They feel it changing, they feel powerless to affect it, but they're absolutely powerless to change it back. It's not going to change back. There's something plaintive about it. And of course they are, I don't want to sound like a snob. Oh, what the hell.
It's a bit late.
A lot of them are saps, is what I have to say. I mean, anyone who thinks that Sarah Palin isn't just cashing out on this and is going to make a few $1 million on her book and then leave them flat is a fool. She's obviously, classically, hollow, heartless opportunist, the shallowest kind. And she's going to leave them in the lurch once she's cashed out. And she seems to be the one who is their Passionaria, or their Joan of Arc. Well, this is no good.
That was about...
Were you yawning?
Not at all. No. I was segueing.
I thought you were stifling something. How am I supposed to feel?
No, we were talking...
Are we boring you? No.
I thought we might move from American domestic politics to British politics, and I thought I'd begin by asking you to compare the current Tory Prime Minister to a former Prime Minister, Mrs. Thatcher, and perhaps you can tell us your view of the two of them.
I don't know anything about Mr. Cameron, and I shouldn't pretend that I do. Anyone who wants an illuminating discussion about British politics this month shouldn't be asking me, sorry.
All right.
Whereof, I'd like to assure you of this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, where I don't know what I'm talking about, I try and shut the hell up. I can tell you about having a physical encounter with Mrs. Thatcher.
Well, that's where I thought we might lead to, just to kind of round things up. We could finish on Iraq, but I thought...
That would be dragging things back to my memoirs, but that's what I'm here for.
Well, so one of the women you do talk about, and talk about sexually,
yes,
is Mrs. Thatcher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you convince us that it's anything other than a ooh?
I went to see her speak just as she'd become the leader of the opposition. It must have been 78 or 77, I suppose. And everyone, you can look it up, everyone in the press in those days, the Tory press too, which was still pro-Edward Heath, was saying, this is a spasm on the part of the Tories. This is a shrill suburban housewife, unelectably right-wing, ignorant, provincial, and so on. It's amazing to go back and look at this. And I thought, I don't think this is true at all. I've just seen her speak to the party conference. She's got some of the most perfect skin I've almost ever seen on a human being. Unbelievably lovely eyes, and a roll of the hip that would, you know.
But would it?
Yeah. And so I wrote this in the New Statesman, saying I thought she had a sexual hold on her party. Now, I've had a lot of rough mail in my life. The worst, how could you possibly mail I've ever had was about that. But I thought, no, I'm sure I'm right. And so I went to a reception in the House of Lords where I knew she was going to be, thinking, I'm going to follow up on this. And we were introduced by Peregrine Worsthorne. And I thought she recognized the name, because I think if you're the leader of the Tory party and a young man, then rather a handsome young mammal, working for the leading socialist opposition paper, says he thinks you're sexy, it's possible you remember his name. Anyway, it seemed to me that she did. So we got into a fight about Zimbabwe, then Rhodesia, where I was right on the point of fact and she was wrong. But where she stuck up for her position so well that in the end I thought, it's not that big a point. I said, well, no doubt there's much in what you say, ma'am, and I bowed as if to acknowledge that we could move on. And she said, no, bow lower. And I felt all volition leaving me. And I bowed further and straightened up again and began to say, no, much lower. Till I was bent right over, and she'd been rolling up the order of the day, the parliamentary order paper, behind her back into a tube, stepped round behind me, smacked me on the bum. And I regained the vertical with some difficulty. And she walked away, and over her shoulder said, naughty boy. I thought I was going to come in my pants. Anyway, as I trudged back home over Westminster Bridge, I thought, this woman has really got something. She's got real charisma, and